With less than a month until the UK is due to leave the European Union, UK Prime Minister Theresa May postponed the so-called meaningful vote on the Brexit deal until March the 12th because her team had further negotiations in Brussels to secure assurances that will satisfy a majority in Parliament. But what are the recent amendments approved by Westminster? Will the UK face a delay on Brexit? How will Brexit affect China-UK relations? To discuss these issues and more, I'm very happy to be joined in the studio by Cui Hongjian, Director of the Department for European Studies at the China Institute of International Studies, and William Spears, the Chairman of the Spearhead China. That's our topic. This is a dialogue. I'm Yang Rui. Lord William, why did Prime Minister Theresa May decide to postpone the Brexit deal negotiation and vote?
Well, there's been a history behind this, in as much that not everyone was behind her, and the way it's been dealt with has been totally unsatisfactory for parliaments. If you don't get a majority, it's like losing your football team. If you can't keep your football team together, you've got a big problem. So there's a delay, they want training, and unfortunately Mrs May has difficulty training her team because she does not listen to them, unfortunately.
Okay, still there's a negotiation in Brussels between UK and European Union. It gives some maybe hope for us, which means that yes, we can continue our discussion. But on the other side, I mean, the problem is how could Theresa May find out a solution to satisfy the majority of Parliament in UK? Because so far I'm not sure. Maybe for Prime Minister May herself, what's the majority of Parliament in UK? Still, I mean, with a very big question mark, because so far as we know, not only for Conservative Party and also for Labour Party, they do have maybe some change on their own viewpoints. How could UK leave from European Union?
William, what are the major issues that have prevented members of Parliament from building consensus on the issue of Brexit?
Well, it's a bit rather like the general public in the UK. They're split on everything. Unfortunately, some people want a delay so they can negotiate a better deal. Some people want a delay so that they can get some amendments towards the wall between Northern and Southern Ireland, which is a big problem. And other people just want no Brexit, and other people want Brexit now. So there's not a consensus of opinion that's happy for everyone, I'm afraid.
What do you think of the image of a globalized UK of a divided Britain?
Firstly, I think this so-called global Britain now become, I think, consensus for almost over all of the parties in the Parliament and also in government, because it used to be a proposal issued by government, and I think for this so-called global Britain means that firstly it has a very big political meaning for Theresa May's government, which means that we should go beyond the Brexit. We should look wider. We should just focus on the Brexit. We should go back to a natural development for UK as a nation state. Another kind of meaning, I think for the global Britain means maybe global issues, also foreign policy and security for UK after Brexit, which means that Theresa May government wants to require British people to go beyond Europe, which means that yes, UK is still a big power in the world, and is a member of a permanent member of the Security Council in UN and so on. So I think yes, it could be a kind of political purpose, and also with a very, very big meaning for domestic and also external affairs. But now the problem is, once there is not a successful Brexit, there will not be any, basis for this so-called global Britain in future.
Look, Theresa May promised MPs a vote on whether or not to delay Brexit or rule out leaving the EU without a deal if her plan is rejected on March the 12th. From your perspective, William, which one is more likely to happen? An approval for May's Brexit deal, a no-deal Brexit, or a delay of Brexit?
Well, that's an interesting question because only yesterday, last evening, the ERG, which is led by Rees-Mogg, the people who are very, let's say, Brexiteers, if you wish, in the Tory party, have softened their approach. So we have more likely to have some deal, or a deal may be accepted, as long as you get the appropriate wording in an appendix from the European Commission, European Union. Now, that may not happen because the big problem is you've got Germany, but France, one say no, no, no. The European Commission 2 days ago said yes, they would be prepared to do it, which upset many countries in Europe, of course. But there has to be compromise. Europe needs the money from the UK. The UK needs to honour its commitment to the public to exit Brexit, if you wish. And there has to be a balance to make sure it's right for everyone. The big problem is we don't have unity in the UK at the moment, which is quite an embarrassing situation, to be quite honest.
Do you think excessive democracy is to take the blame for the division and the lack of unity in the United Kingdom?
Sure. I think if we look at the, the origin of the Brexit because of the referendum, I think yes, at the beginning, so far, not only for some observers from outside like me and also some British scholars, they also recognize that the referendum itself, produced a very, very big bad effect because of so-called over-democracy. And now I think the big problem for Brexit process is now it's involved also into a kind of struggle between the different parties in the parliament. If we look at what happened for Labour Party and even for internal differences within the Conservative Party, and also some maybe individual consideration, for some politicians. So now we look at we find out a very, very big dilemma there, because there is nobody or there is no party could find out a real definition of what's a real national interests for UK. Everybody, even every party, try to take the dominance of defining what's the interest for UK. But if you look at, more carefully, you can find out mostly maybe it's not from national interests. It's just for some people, for some parties.
Not only did we see 20-vote rebellion against Prime Minister Theresa May from within the Conservatives, but also a few MPs quit their job in protest against Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn's position on Brexit. What's going on?
Well, firstly, I must agree with Choi. Too many people are looking after their own interests and not the interests of the country. And that's a fact. And I'm sorry to say that, I'm British, but that's the problem with our political system at the moment. What's going to happen now? It's going to be a difficult one. It's going to be a gentle approach. Jeremy Corbyn was forced to change his tact on Brexit because he had so many people against him. He has always been a Brexiteer, but now he's wants another referendum. To me, having a second.
By the way, we'll talk about another referendum.
Okay.
We, on the one hand, do appreciate the charm of British political institutions, such as the constitutional monarchy. On the other hand, when you have so many endless chaotic debates in the parliament across the aisle between the Conservatives and the Labour, who will be the arbitrator? What do you think of the role of the Queen? Queen has made it open, pressed the case of not having a second referendum. That's pretty clear. Does that amount to a kind of arbitrary saying like, listen to me, I have the final say?
It was a very subtle speech she gave, encouraging people to join together. The Queen is apolitical. She cannot be political. But at the same time, obviously, she has her own views. in the Parliament we have what we call the Speaker, a chap called John Bercow, who's meant to keep everyone together. At the moment, with emotions running high, that's a very, very difficult thing to do, because people get very excited. They're on television, sometimes that makes them even perform even better, or even worse, as the case may be. So, I'm saying Prince William made the same speech in Wales yesterday, and the big problem is that if he doesn't, or Morocco rather, he cannot be too political, because the things that if the Queen becomes political, then people will go against her as well. The monarchy is a fine institution. It's been there for thousands of years, and in recent years has probably saved our sanity in the UK, because it's stable and it's progressive.
Hung Jian, undoubtedly Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn countered May's decision as recklessly running down the clock, and he tweeted that the vote on March the 12th was intended to force MPs to choose between her bad deal and a disastrous no deal. Do you agree?
Partly I agree with Mr. Corbyn's comments on the kind of strategy now taken by Prime Minister May. Because also, once there is a postpone of the vote in the Parliament, which means a very, very narrow, time for the how to say, a successful or stable Brexit, because of also the deadline, the 29th of March. So it also could be called a last-minute strategy, because once there is a next time between the vote in the Parliament and the deadline of Brexit, there will be bigger and more pressure on the Member of Parliament to make a decision. But on the other side, I think that Mr. Corbyn's comments is a kind of avoid his own responsibility. Once you don't want to make a decision or go to the direction of a no-deal Brexit, why don't you give some more cooperation with Theresa May government? Why could the Labour Party to help the Conservative Party to find the consensus or majority in Parliament? So I think, yes, on one side he's right, but on the other side he's trying to, take responsibility to Theresa May government.
Thank you so much. You are watching Dialogue with two distinguished guest speakers, William Spears, Chairman of the Spearhead China, and Mr. Cui Hongjian, Senior Research Fellow with the China Institute of International Studies. We are discussing the impact of Brexit. We'll be back in a short while. Please stay with us. Welcome back. Hung Jian, in terms of benefits of the taxation policy of continental Europe, how much would the UK lose once the UK were to have a no-deal Brexit?
I think firstly it's kind of unsafety, in failing, because nobody will know what will happen. So that means maybe there will be a big panic. There will be
a strong sense of unpredictability and uncertainty.
Very big uncertainty and also unsafety. Secondly, yes, I think in a short term there will be a very, very big disordered situation for European Union and the UK because of trade, for example. There will be a custom or not. And also, how about the movement of people between UK and the EU? Because so far also there are some very special arrangement for the movement for people. But now, once there is a no deal, so what will happen tomorrow? If you are, convenient to go back to European Union member states from UK, or the same situation happened for some citizens of UK now living in the European Union. But of course, I think maybe for middle or long-term effect, that the no-deal Brexit, I think it will give a very big, negative impact on firstly the visibility and also credibility, not only for UK and also for EU, because it will give also I think some a problem for member states of EU now, because how could the European Union to keep the balance? Between to punish UK during the Brexit process, and also to keep the solidarity within European Union. the current 27 member states. So once the no-deal situation happened, I don't think it's just a bad thing or bad situation for UK, and it's also bad for European Union.
The UK may cease to be a member of the European Union, but it remains a member and a strong member of the NATO. Recently, the remarks of your defense minister put him on loggerheads with the Minister of Exchequer, who was about to head for China and to pay an official visit. This defense minister of the UK said openly that he needs the expansion of a defense budget to respond to the alleged threats from Russia and China, and he's ready to be involved in maritime patrols in the South China Sea. Such remarks were obviously detrimental to UK-China relationship, and it would be very harmful. So what do you think of the recent disputes between members of parliament, between the cabinet ministers regarding UK-China relations, which started to be called a golden era since Prime Minister David Cameron?
The situation, there's history again behind this. Gavin Williamson, he was chairman of the party, and he positioned his situation where he made it very difficult for Theresa May not to make him defence secretary. He wanted that, that's his position. His latest remarks with regard to the South China Sea are inflammatory and totally unnecessary. UK has a really good relationship with China. The big problem is some people who are distant from communicating directly with China, with not understanding the situation in the world as it is, they make stupid remarks, and it's totally unnecessary. And really, I think he should have been sacked. But also, what makes it even worse, the aircraft carrier that he's going to send to the China Sea is not ready for another 2 years. So totally unnecessary. Totally. But I do appreciate that people have to have the feeling their position with regard to their national interests. I do understand that. But that goes for China as well.
A majority of the Chinese who follow the process all remarks of Lord Williamson's comments on the maneuvers of the British Royal Navy in South China Sea. They are concerned whether a UK, in the wake of leaving the European Union, will take side with the United States on issues concerning China's market, China's military build-up, our presence in the South China Sea, Taiwan even.
Yeah.
So do you think our concerns and grievances are justifiable, or you are still following, you're still trying to figure out what's going to happen next?
I think as a scholar, also observer, I try to maybe take a different part of this words from Mr. Williams or some other maybe British politicians. I think firstly we need to understand that this is some requirement from the UK government, just like I mentioned, to keep visibility globally because of the global Britain, the proposal. But of course, so to go into or maybe to go back to Asia and the Pacific region, I think it would be a very, very big purpose or target for this proposal. Another issue is how could UK to get some more cooperation with some important partners after Brexit. I think yes, undoubtedly the United States would be maybe the top one option for UK to get some more cooperation. So to follow up some steps or some strategy of the United States towards China, I think would be also requirement for the government. Third is, I think for UK, if it want to keep the global visibility or maybe a believable capability to be a big security player, so how could you do something? I think because now, as we know, China and the US, it looks like there are more competitions between those two powers. So to be part of this game between China and the United States, I think it's useful for UK to keep its visibility. But now the question is, I don't know how could the UK to find out the balance between its policy especially trade investment, to get some more cooperation with China, and then to follow up the U.S. on the security or even politics. So even after the Williams speech, we can find that there are some also critics from the government and also from some other politicians in UK. Even it's called as a gunboat diplomacy. So I think once UK diplomacy or once British foreign policy towards China go into this direction, I think it would not be in the interest of UK.
Having said this, the politicians in Brussels certainly want to keep the UK in the orbit of the European Union financially. After all, London remains a financial hub for Europeans and for people around the world. Now, when we give a second look to the UK-China relations, financial services remain a strong point on the UK side. Look at the bilateral currency swap scheme, which is very impressive, by the way. Do you think this is likely to be undermined by Williamson's remarks or the Brexit itself?
Most mature people will know that Williamson's remarks were absolutely out of order. They realised that it was for his own benefit and not the benefit of the country. That's for sure. China and the UK financially are entwined. London as a financial centre will become stronger if there's Brexit, very much so. They've already organised an agreement with many of the banks in Europe for that to be. So, you know, there are many things that are not set in stone yet. And the thing is, the Brits are very, very, let's say, innovative in their approach to life. And this, even though it looks pretty bad now, it may well be a good thing in the end. Who knows?
It seems that the UK has also given very good advice on the reform of the SOE for years. Generally, Hong Jian, are you convinced that long-term UK-China relations will be improved, will be constructed on a more solid basis, or the other way around?
I believe that. Because
cautiously optimistic?
Yes, because I think now it's very difficult time.
But the UK has to take side between the United States and China on many critical issues, such as Huawei.
I don't think it's just a limit of the witness of the wisdom of British people. I think the biggest interest for British foreign policy, for British economy, especially in the wake of Brexit, would be to try to become a bridge between US and China. For example, to give some more technical solution for any kind of difference between China and the US, just like what happened now for 5G issue.
Let's look at continental Europe. In the wake of the UK departure, I'm afraid the Franco-German axis will form the bulk of European solidarity. In contrast to the EU officials' attitudes on delaying Brexit, William, both French President Macron and Germany's Chancellor Angela Merkel struck a firm tone towards a Brexit delay on Wednesday. Macron said the EU could only agree to extend the Brexit negotiations if Britain gave a clear reason for requesting a delay. And Merkel stood in the same line with Macron, but with more flexibility. She said, quote, "If Britain needs more time, we won't refuse, but we are striving for an orderly solution." What did she mean?
Good question. If UK actually Brexits, if you wish, a lot of jobs are going to be lost in Germany. I mean, a lot of jobs, at least, I think it's about 100,000, probably more actually. So Merkel has her own interests in mind, but at the same time, she understands that we all need to trade together. Now, Macron is a fine man, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, he's a little bit inexperienced. He's got his own problems at home with the yellow vests and what have you. And when anyone has a problem at home, they always want something abroad that they can focus on, so it brings everyone together in their own country.
Like President Donald Trump in Hanoi, well, his personal lawyer says the president was lying to the Congress.
It's a strategy. Many people use it. You know, it's many governments use it. So France and Germany, very strong powers. But what one must remember, of course, that France and the Netherlands actually voted against the conditions of the Lisbon Treaty. But of course it was just swept under the carpet.
What does the Lisbon Treaty say?
Basically, it's the basis of the European Union together, as it is today, politically, as opposed to commercially. It's more political, which of course many people didn't realise. And we didn't have a referendum on that. We had a referendum actually going into Europe in the common market many years ago. We didn't have a referendum about the Lisbon Treaty, was probably the biggest thing there was. And we had a referendum about getting out. So, you know, it's a real mess, really, in reality. We should have had a referendum about the Lisbon Treaty, and that would have solved a lot of problems.
I'm afraid the tabloid in the UK would be very happy to have this story. Cambridge University's naked professor, Dr. Victoria Bateman, hated the headlines recently. During an interview by the BBC Radio 4's Today programme, she took off her clothes with Brexit written across her body. She claimed Brexit leaves Britain naked. What do you think of this tabloid story, and what kind of sentiments did this act by a Cambridge professor deliver to the audiences?
I think for some elite, or especially for some, for example, businessmen or intellectuals, yes, Brexit would be a very, very big problem, and also a lose-lose situation for both the EU and the UK. But now the question, I mean, for UK, for the Brexit, is the very, very big separation between the elite people and the average people, or between maybe the parties like that. Because the benefits for UK, according to some Brexiters, believe that they could take back, I mean, the sovereignty from Brussels, and they could decide everything by themselves. They could not get any kind of interventions from other European countries like Germany. For example, how could this very big conflict, as I know that during the Eurozone debt crisis. So I think it's a very, very big background. I think this event happened for the Cambridge University's professor. A very, very big, I mean, deviation for people's mindset, for people's understanding about what's the European integration and what's the globalization, the benefits or the challenge.
We don't have to be afraid of the bizarre behavior of a professor from Cambridge, but we do have reasons to worry whether the British government would mobilize troops and send them to the streets to safeguard law and order in the wake of Brexit. Do you think this is likely to happen? What would be the worst case scenario?
Worst case scenario is, I think that there may be the threat of martial law, okay, but certainly it will not happen, not in the UK. Believe it or not, we're quite self-restrained in many ways, even though there are some people go off the rails. And okay, it could happen, people get irate, upset, uptight, there may be shortages of food, there may be shortages of what have you, but that won't last so long. That won't last so long.
Indeed, for a country that went through the fears and the violence of IRA, they could stay composed and calm despite the chaos and chaotic debates on the prospects of Brexit. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.